Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Misunderstanding Recovery Podcast today. I feel like I'm misunderstanding today, which is always the best place to be. I wrote a devotion. The title was Living in the I Don't Know. I was like, yeah, I like that, because that's where we're all supposed to be as far as studying the Tao goes, is having that mind of I don't know. There may be another way of looking at this. Or Course in Miracles says, can I see this differently? It's funny, if I've got something that I think I need to make a decision about, if I go to a meeting and I listen to the people that I think know nothing, like the newcomer or the paper signer who's not really interested in AA but's there because they have to get their paper signed, but I listen anyway, I'm amazed at the times that I hear exactly what I need. If you're new to the podcast, we talk about how Taoist literature, Taoist thought relates to our 12-step recovery and our understanding of the higher power, or to stay with our theme, our misunderstanding of the higher power. Once I believe I have things figured out, that's when I'm in the most danger. I have to keep that open mind. Doesn't mean that I don't look at past experience or what education I may have, but you can do all of that and have an openness, other solutions, other ideas. I found when I do that, life runs a lot easier than when I approach situations thinking I've got it figured out. So 2 things before we get to our readings and topic today. Today, we're taking a little detour from our normal mode of operation. Normally what we do is pick some text and talk about it, the text itself. Instead, what we're doing right now is we're going through how Taoist literature, primarily the Tao Te Ching, relates to each step. So we've already talked about the first and second steps. Today we're going to talk about step 3. Before we do that, I do want to talk about a resource that we have at buddyc.org, and the resource today is the bookstore. There's a bookstore tab, and under that tab, I've put the books we talk about in the podcast. I've also included other books that we reference and some that we haven't referenced at all, but ones that I've liked or that have been referred to me. And so I've added those in the bookstore for an easy way for you to find them. If you're looking for, they're in alphabetical order, but you can always do a find on the page and find the topics that you're looking for. And they have links to Amazon mostly. We do make a little bit on that, but it's not much. So it's more there for your reference than it is to make money for the podcast. Okay, secondly, we want to talk about a synchronistic moment that we've had this week, or really any time in the past that comes to mind that we can talk about. And today, Libby has one for us. Libby?
I do. This happened to me about 2 weeks ago, and it started with recording the podcast that day. So we always talk for a couple minutes before we start, and somebody asked me, do you have a synchronistic event to share, Libby? And I said, I wish I did, but I don't. And they said, actually, you did have one. You just didn't see it. I'm sure you had one. And we all laughed and continued on. And then after the podcast, I have a mitochondrial disorder. So every time I do anything, then I have to sleep because every single cell in my body doesn't work. So I took a nap, and then I woke up and I taught 3 piano lessons. I'm a piano teacher by trade. And my last student is a 16-year-old guy, and he stayed afterward to talk to me about some things. And he said that he'd been on a trip with his family and he just noticed some stuff he'd never noticed before. And he started talking about these things. And it caused me to mention a few things to him that my brother said once. And he laughed, and I realized that he was talking about the same thing that we were talking about, how these synchronistic moments happen. And then, of course, I had to go take another nap. And when I woke up from that nap, I put on a YouTube video, a YouTube talk that someone had recommended to me. And they started talking about videos of this situation where people are passing a basketball back and forth. And then a person in a gorilla suit walks through the middle of it. Or some other people have one where they're supposed to be watching something else and the person in a toga walks through. And the people who watch these videos in studies that are done for psychology, they'll say, we want you to count how much times this thing happens. And then they'll have something happen like that. And the people won't see it. And even they'll show them the video afterward and they'll say, you showed me a different video the first time. And this was like, I was like, oh my gosh. The conversation I had with this student, the thing we said this morning at the podcast recording, they're all the same thing. So I put a request in with my public library ebooks, and now I have that. I just got it yesterday. I just got that book from my library. So now I can read about it and hopefully learn more about noticing these things that happen.
So, Libby, what do you call that?
Call it that you need a mind shift because you're not seeing everything. And you need to be open to possibilities and open to the fact that you don't know everything. Realize that, and I know that's true too with witnesses. Like they say that people will witness a crime and that's a huge event. It got their attention. And they'll interview the witnesses and get very different ideas from them when they themselves think that they saw it perfectly. It's a really common phenomenon.
For me, I have to realize, and I'm realizing this more and more, that the way I'm perceiving something is, I know it's not 100% correct, ever, but the majority of the time it is much more incorrect than what I realize, no matter what it is that I'm talking about.
That to me is similar to what you just said. Like you go into a meeting and maybe your brain that's trying to be logical will start parsing the participants and go, this is a participant I want to listen to for such and such logical reason. And that is one that maybe I don't want to listen to so much because of such and such logical reason. The logical reasons aren't going to give you the access to what you really need to hear. Being open is going to give you access to what you really need to hear. Being ready for a higher power to do things higher than your logic.
And also with that is, if we're talking about meetings, I've gotten the most out of meetings that I came there to be of service in the meeting, not to get something. We had an old timer that used to say, I'm just here to get my medicine. I guess that's a common thing said in meetings. Every time I heard that, I said, why don't you come to give someone else some medicine? Why are you here for you? And if I come with that attitude that I want to give, I'm here to give, I'm here to be helpful, then I always get what I need every time. Every time.
Yeah, I was reading some advice for leaders, and it was saying that the way to lead is to pretend you're leading a grape plant, a grapevine. The way you lead a grapevine to become its full, complete self and to give beautiful fruit is by taking care of it. Noticing, does it need water? Noticing, is it going to be freezing and I need to protect it? You're noticing there might be a few too many bugs here, etc. And the same thing, if you come to be a leader, you came to be nurturing and having people become more powerful than they are without your input. It also was talking about the nature of a person. And first, it had a little exercise there, like, what is the nature of a fountain? What is the nature of a grapevine? The nature of the grapevine is to give fruit. The nature of the fountain is to have water flow. And it went through these things and it concluded that the nature of a human being is to be giving. That if you're not giving and you're not in a mode of generosity, then you're not fulfilling your capacity to really contribute and you're not therefore going to be happy.
And anyone that doesn't realize this, I had someone, I get challenged from time to time on things, and someone was challenging me, actually, as a family member, on this idea of being helpful. They were talking about spirituality in general. And I said, all I know is that when I have an attitude of being helpful, I have more peace and I have more joy and I enjoy my life. I said, I'm just going to stay right there and let everything else work itself out. And I said, why don't you try it? If it works, then great. If it doesn't, you haven't lost anything. It's hard for people to try that, though, because they're so used to being in charge that you have to give up that control for that to happen. You have to listen to people that you don't normally listen to. You have to surrender ego, all those things. But it just really is simple. And if it's not, in my experience, if it's not getting more simple, then it's probably not the Tao, it's probably not spirituality. Because it's about things getting, Katie, can I say they're getting simpler? Kate's my editor. On edge when she's here because can I say that, Katie, that they're getting simpler? Is simpler a word? It's
Yes,
not.
that's
Is that
fine.
good? Okay,
Yes,
thank
that's
you.
excellent.
Okay, let's move on to our topic today. Thank you for that synchronistic moment, Libby, because things do. We start noticing how they're already lining up for us. And it's great when we start seeing that. And that means when I start seeing it, I can participate more in it and I can let those things happen and not get in the way.
I noticed a definition of this that is online. They call it inattentional blindness. It's defined as a cognitive phenomenon where, due to high focus on a task, you fail to notice unexpected, fully visible objects in your field of view. It's not caused by visual impairment, but rather by selective attention, filtering out irrelevant information to manage mental workload. Common examples include drivers missing motorcycles, and inattentive blindness experiments show people missing a gorilla while counting basketball passes. And I think sometimes what we might be doing is wanting to not experience or see things that we might think are unpleasant. There's that saying, no garbage, no lotus, or another saying that if you have garbage, then you can make compost and grow stuff. So don't ignore garbage. Seek everywhere.
Thanks, Libby. First, let's just talk about the third step before we start looking at text. Made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood God, as we understood Him. When I first saw that step, of course, as with all the steps, what I read and what I thought I read were two different things. Just like we're talking about noticing stuff, because I was not open-minded, wasn't open-hearted. I thought it said I turned over my drinking to God, was what I thought it said. That's not what it said. What it says is made a decision. Okay, first of all, I didn't turn anything over. I made a decision to turn some things over. You hear that in our meetings, we'll hear the example of the three frogs on the log. One frog decides to jump. How many frogs are on the log? Three. He made a decision to jump. It doesn't mean he jumped. We make a decision to do things and then we follow that up with action. So we're making the decision. It's interesting here that the first step showed us our outward unmanageability in life. The second step showed us our inward unmanageability, really, and that there was a solution. The third step must be the solution. It doesn't say I made a decision to turn my drinking over. It says my will and my life over. My will and my life. If someone's having a difficult time with this, I'll ask them to write down all the things they care about. Your life, the way I see life is those things that you care about. There's your life. Your will is your intention, what you plan to do, what you want to do, your purpose for the day. The faculty by which a person decides on and initiates action. Okay, so our will, the way we're deciding and initiating action, we turn that over. And turn over for me means to let go of. It's interesting how it says that we turn over our will and our cares to God as we understand God. Back to the opposite of what church, what religion, or at least what I was involved in, you were told what to believe. Here it says you've got to do it, and we're not telling you what to believe. It's the opposite. You just take the action. I found when we wrote down all the things we cared about, you would think that'd be a long list, but it's not. It's normally maybe 20, 30 things. A lot of times, 8 or 10, if you don't start repeating. And all those are things we don't have to carry anymore, which in reality was why I was drinking, was to relieve the stress of me trying to carry things that I was not equipped to carry. In the third step, we're making a decision to let go of these things, a decision to turn these things over. If we're making this decision, when do we do it? We do it by working the other steps as we work through the fourth step and the fifth, and then the six and seven, especially, and 8 and 9, when we start making our amends and all these things. This whole process is the process by which we turn over and let go of life. That's what I've experienced. So, what I found as far as in the Tao, a lot of text about every bit of the Tao is about letting go. So there's going to be an aspect of letting go in everything. But even more here, talking about letting go, about the space within. I'm going to start with one. If you guys have any text, just chime in. This is just a Lao Tzu quote. In the end, the treasure of life is missed by those who hold on and gained by those who let go. Verse 11, shape clay into a vessel. It's the space within that makes it useful. I think we talked about that last week. Kate?
I was looking at verse 11, where it talks about the spokes joined together in a wheel, but the center hole is what makes the wagon move. That we shape clay into a pot, but it's the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want. We hammer wood for a house, but it is the inner space that makes it livable. We work with being, but non-being is what we use. And I picked that one because there are all these things that I do and that I think I'm in control of, but I'm not really in control of much at all. And that's what I like. I've always loved step 3, but in the very beginning of learning about the steps and everything, I didn't really understand it the same way I do today. I tried to put other people's belief system, I tried to make it my belief system, which it turned out didn't work very well for me. Because it didn't work, because I didn't truly believe in it. But now with this, studying the Tao and all of the stuff we do here, I do really believe in it. So with the wheel, it's doing something out in the world. It's helping the carriage go along or the car or whatever. But it's the center. If I can move myself to the center or step myself aside from what's really happening, I can step back and see that changes my will. What was that definition that you said of the will? You just said of it?
The faculty by which a person decides on and initiates action.
So my action is different. I'll decide on and initiate different things if I'm like the outside of the wheel that's spinning around and trying to make everything. I want to get where I'm going. I want to decide what's happening next. If I'm the center of the wheel, I can step back from that and look at things quietly. I think of that. I try to step back from things and look at them quietly and calmly and just not put myself into everything. And I find that to be a much more calm way to live. It makes me feel more in tune with the whole of existence and the world.
Thank you, Kate. I've got a quote for you. This is the Book of Merdad, page 68. One is the road of life and death, O monks. Upon the rim of the wheel of time, every motion in the world is a motion in a circle. The wheel of time rotates, but its axis is ever at rest. That's what you were talking about. In the axis, all is peace. On the rim, all is commotion. Where would you rather be? I say to you, slip from the rim of time into the axis and spare yourselves the nausea of motion. Let time revolve about you. You revolve not with time. I heard that. I said, man, what a great quote.
Wow. Send that to me?
I can't. The Book of Merdad. I wonder where that's from. Somewhere in ancient wherever. I looked it up. It was a Lebanese religion and written in 1948.
It's
But
awesome,
yeah,
though.
it lost some street cred, but it's still good. Drew.
Yeah, the wheel metaphor also reminded me of the metaphor that I've used in here a few times of the merry-go-round and being little and being on a merry-go-round and trying to get to the center and standing on the center where it's actually calm and peaceful on the center of the merry-go-round and just watching everybody on the ends hold on for dear life and fly off. I like that metaphor of getting to the center, staying in the center. Life's a lot calmer there. The verse that stood out to me was in relation to step 3 was verse 22, specifically the last couple of sentences. When the ancient masters said, if you want to be given everything, give everything up, they weren't using empty phrases. Only in being lived by the Tao can you be truly yourself. And I think especially that last line really matches up with step 3, turning our will and our lives over to the care of God, really matches up with only in being lived by the Tao can you be truly yourself. That's saying turn your will and your lives over to the Tao, almost literally, then you can be yourself. You can't be yourself just by yourself, which is a little paradoxical, but no shortage of paradoxes in Tao Te Ching. This is just one of many, but I like this idea of being lived by the Tao rather than I am living and I'm incorporating the Tao into my life. I am actually being lived by the Tao. I'm opening myself up to the Tao working through me. And I think that really speaks to step 3. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. That really is turning my will and my care over, isn't it? Being lived by the Tao. That's good. I picked out a couple. I picked out 21 and 55. I'll read all of 21. The master keeps her mind always at one with the Tao. You can only keep your mind at one if you're turning your will and your life over, right? That is what gives her radiance. The Tao is ungraspable. How can her mind be at one with it? Because she doesn't cling to ideas. She lets go. Doesn't mean she doesn't have ideas. She just doesn't cling to them. The Tao is dark and unfathomable. How can it make her radiant? Because she lets it. She lets it. That means she had to stop clinging. You can't let something if you're in control, in doing. Since before time and space were, the Tao is. It doesn't say the Tao was. It says the Tao is. Remember, we've talked about that ever-present moment. It is beyond is and is not. It's even further than that. It's not even is. It's beyond is and is not. How do I know this is true? I look inside myself and see. It doesn't say I look in myself and decide. I look inside and I notice. I see. I can only do that if I'm letting it, if I'm not clinging, all those things, letting go, turning my will and my life over, doing what I decided to do in the third step, being lived by the Tao. 55, I'm going to read the last little stanza. The master's power is like this. He lets all things come and go effortlessly without desire. I think that desire means without selfish desire, without self involved. He never expects results, no expectations, accepts what is as it is right now in this ever present moment. And because he does not expect, he is not disappointed. Wow, how simple. If he is never disappointed, his spirit never grows old. Another way I think you could look at that, spirit never growing old means spirit never dies. Spirit doesn't stays vibrant and young, does not. You know what happens is you start to get old physically, you start getting stiff, you can't do what you used to could do, and eventually you die if we keep away from expectations. As a result, really as a result of acceptance in our life, we can stay fully alive. Basically, if you back that up all the way back, it's about accepting the moment as it is right now. I've mentioned many times the two tools I use for that. Thank you for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. And I would not change blank, whatever it is I'm having difficulty accepting, even if I could. And in reality, there's nothing I can change in this moment. I may can change as successive, but right now there is nothing I can change. So that's not a sign of weakness. That's really a sign of strength. That I cannot assert my will on something that I cannot change and keep fighting everything. The key for me was stopping the fight, stop resisting, accepting it like it is, whether I like it or not, doesn't matter. Then maybe I can see if there's something I could need to do or something for me to let go of. And that's, I think, what step three is prepping us for. Saying, okay, we're making this decision to let go, this decision to be lived by the Tao. Get ready, buckle up, because now the work comes. Because you really don't know what you're deciding. Is this really what you want? You really want to turn your will and your life over? You really want to let go? Guess what's next? What's next is some abrasive action. If you're a rough rock and you're in the stream, you have to let this water runs over you and changes you slowly, and you may have rocks that grind against you and cause you to change and smooth. It wasn't easy for that nice smooth rock to become the nice smooth rock. It had to let go. And it's somewhat the same because what we start now we find with our fourth step, we start doing an inventory and looking at our fears and the resentments that we have, the harms we've done. That's not an easy process, but that's the first part of the process to start smoothing us, to start making us useful, getting rid of our anger and our resentment and all those ways that we see fear acted out in our lives. That's what we're deciding to do in the third step. So just get ready. That's your decision because the real work is next. Anyone else have a little different view of the third step, or which is fine? It keeps changing for me in regards. It's came to this point and settled for a while. Things change and evolve, and we all look at things a little differently. So if anyone has a different opinion on the third step or how it works or any of those things, please speak up. Libby?
I think the third step is one that proves to me and to a lot of other people that we have to do things day by day. The one day at a time comes into play there. And I think the Tao is like really good for reinforcing this too. I'm looking at verse 64, which somebody mentioned part of it earlier. The Guy Fu Feng says, a tree as great as a man's embrace springs up from a small shoot. A terrace 9 stories high begins with a pile of earth. A journey of 1,000 miles starts under one's feet. And if we're turning things over to our higher power, and I do usually use the word God when I think of my higher power. And it's like suddenly, instead of doing what I thought I was going to be doing this day, this week, I'm doing this other thing because I didn't know that I'm building a terrace 9 stories high. I had the wrong impression. I thought maybe I was building a fence 3 feet high or something. But if I just day by day look at what the next thing is, the next best thing to do, then I am guided. And the one thing that we discussed in step 2 is there are more than one power that's higher than us. But here in step 3, we're picking one of those to commit to. It's really good to always remain aware that there are a lot of things that I'm powerless over, and to pull in the serenity prayer over and over again. God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, which is pretty much everything. The courage to change the things I can, which sometimes seems like a really small thing. That is, like we have a saying, some of my friends and family, we have this saying, partial solutions are real solutions. So there's a big problem, and we can only figure out something that might help with 10% of it, but cheerfully do that thing that helps with 10% of it. And maybe when you wake up tomorrow, 80 or 90% of the rest of it will be gone, because a tree starts from an acorn.
Thanks, Libby. I see that a little differently. When I surrender, I've used this example before. If I'm fighting for a country and my country loses the war and I'm a soldier, I surrender to the victor. When I surrender to the victor, first I have to lay down all of my weapons, everything. I don't stick a knife over on the side and then pick it back up once I've surrendered. No, surrender is surrender. And then at that point, it's the responsibility of the victor to take care of me. As long as I'm a prisoner of war, they're supposed to feed me. They're supposed to house me. Now, we know that doesn't all happen or happen in the way that seems humane. That's the way it's supposed to happen. That's the principle. So, in effect, when I surrender to my alcoholism or surrender to whatever's going on, I lay down my weapons and stop fighting. And there's an element there that I'm taking care of. I'm forever a prisoner of war. That's not going to ever change. So for me, my strength comes in my surrender. A little different. That would be helpful for any of you guys who have a problem. I don't have a problem with God, but if you did have a problem, this is another way that you could look at it without even having any kind of real God belief of some type. Another view. That's all. And neither's right or wrong, because where we are in our spiritual walk is where we are. There's nothing to disprove or prove. It's all about what works in your life. This works in my life, so there you have it.
If it works, don't fix it.
That's it, Libby. It's always about that open-mindedness. Am I open to my ideas changing? Yes, I'm very open to that.
One of the experiences we can have that will keep us from being open is fear. And the decision to turn everything over to the higher power is a little part of it that I missed in step 3 for like years. Like they were like, I always thought that I had never done step 3 because I thought it said I have turned everything over, which wasn't true. And people did explain it to me looking back, and I did go ahead and do other steps, but I thought I was like fake doing them, had imposter syndrome there, that I would have to go back later after I had actually done step 3 and do them again. And I think for me, sometimes a lot of the thing, and I'm still having to do it all the time, and I think a lot of times it's fear that keeps me from turning things over. And I've read some other mystical places where it's saying that the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. Many of us have read or seen the Dune franchise, the Dune book, the Dune movie. And of course, they have a persistent saying in there that says, fear is the little killer, takes away your ability to do things. And the Tao talks about fear. For example, in verse 74, it says, if you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. If you aren't afraid of dying, there is nothing you can't achieve. And some people say all fears are based on the fear of dying, and all anxieties are a type of fear. And then verse 74 goes on to say, trying to control the future is like trying to take the master carpenter's place. When you handle the master carpenter's tools, the chances are you'll cut your hand or worse, man. And you were saying, somebody was saying here earlier, I think it was Buddy, that it's part of accepting reality to turn things over to the higher power because we are not equipped. We do not know. We are never going to be enough at the center of the wheel that we can see everything that's spinning. With or without unintentional blindness, we're stuck. But we can be in harmony with what is not stuck. We can work with and assist the master carpenter.
Can we just be the wheel? Okay, this is the wheel. Okay, let's just be with that. Not try to change it from, oh, this has wood spokes. I wanted whatever with low profile. Nah, no. Just be whatever the wheel is. Okay, I'm good with that.
I think I'm part of the Tao and I'm part of the wheel and I'm part of all of this. So I think when I'm aligning with it, I can be very close to the Tao I am the Tao in some ways. So I don't see a big difference between myself. There's not like a big, I don't know how to say it exactly, but it's not like a me as something low and the Tao as something high. It's like I'm part of it.
Yeah, and we have a hard time seeing that a lot of times because in our physical world, all we see is division. We see me and you, we see mine and yours, right and wrong, white and black, or white and gray, black and gray. We see all these differences. That has to be a realization from within, the connectiveness of all things. My first clue to that was when I started learning to live compassionately and that how much better I felt when I was helpful rather than when I'm not, when I'm selfish and self-centered. I never end up feeling good if I'm selfish and self-centered. Now it feels kind of almost like a hangover feeling. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like a blah kind of feeling.
I was going to say, I understand that. When I try to step back and think about it, if I'm being selfish or unkind to somebody, and they are all part of also the Tao, then I'm being selfish or unkind to myself in a way. I feel that if we're all involved in, we are all in the Tao. That's how I think of it. So if I steal from Buddy over here, I'm stealing from another part of myself almost. And there's no point to it.
I put a post in the Dow Facebook group. It said, what does this phrase mean to you? Compassion is being kind to yourself. I wasn't saying compassion is getting a pedicure. That's not what I was saying. What I was saying was when I live compassionately, I'm really being kind to me. I'm being compassionate to myself when I'm being compassionate to you. That's why I feel better. Also, that is our tool for getting back to the present moment and getting away from our fears, because our fear takes us out of the moment. When I'm compassionate or helpful, where am I? I'm in the present moment, because that's the only place that I can be helpful, and it's the only place I can be helped or I can be loved is in this present moment. So I think that's what all spirituality is about, quite honestly. Every bit of it is about bringing us to the present moment, that thing that we're missing for the most part, the present moment where we've left because of our fear, taking us into yesterday or tomorrow, worry and regret, or regret about yesterday, worry about tomorrow, and we're not being present when the rest of nature is present. Animals are present. They might remember some things like, but Rex is my dog isn't going to bite me tomorrow for something I did today. It's not like that. Now, he might act a little different if I disciplined him some way, but he is more times than not just present. And I think that's what we crave, actually. We say that, what is it deep inside of all of us is this striving to find God, this need to know God. It's our need to know the present moment. It's our need to be present. That is what God said he was. When Moses asked him in Exodus, he said, "Who do I say sent me?" It's odd. We think they had all these beliefs. He didn't know who God was. And he said, "Who sent me? Who's sending me? Who are you?" He said, "I am that I am," the ever-present moment. Is one, actually, I talked to a Jewish friend. That's one possible translation, is the ever-present moment, which makes sense. Yeah, Libby, you were talking about the third step, about thinking, as I did, that it was about turning my will and my life over to God. I knew nothing about doing any of that in the third. How was I supposed to know how to do that in the third step? There's no way that I would have any tools to help me to do that in the third step.
Yeah. Now that I have a different understanding, hopefully a greater understanding, I see the purity is the point. I have a pure attitude towards what I'm doing when I do each of these steps. I am purely ready to be transformed when I do each of these steps. I was reading through the steps with a friend of mine recently who has just started going to some meetings, and at each one, they were like, "I could never do that." And I was like, "Then don't do it. Just stay on the other step unless and until you get transformed." And I think it's very possible. I expect to see this person later today. I think it's very possible I'm going to be like quoting Kate to them and talk about how what these are asking or suggesting or leading us to is not to give up. Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is unity. And that this is in you already. You're just like have some unintentional blindness here and you can't see it. Or like earlier, Buddy was saying that the feeling of joyful living, I'm paraphrasing, that we get when we are being giving as opposed to when we are being selfish, it feels good, it feels alive, but we have some unintentional blindness to that while we're grasping at other things. And one of the resources that sometimes is mentioned in this podcast is a book where Buddy looked over the Tao and had some ideas about it and wrote them down. And I'm looking at verse 12 in your book, Buddy, and it starts out saying, and this is based on the Tao, data overload can cause confusion. Hearing too many loud sounds can cause deafness. Too many flavors can dull the taste buds. So we're just becoming more one, not a whole lot of things here. We're coming united with our inner and outer selves. It says, later on it says here, for this reason, the sober one is guided by their intuitive inner voice, which I see as linked with being the higher power here. We're guided by the inner. So this again expresses the unity betwixt us and the higher power. They are not concerned with the external. They let go of what is without instead surrendering to what is within. And that calls up our analogy of the wheel again, too, doesn't it?
It does. Thank you, Libby. In my thinking on the third step, too, it's almost, if you want to look at it as a peak, the third step is, I think, the fulfillment of the decision you make in the third step is the preface of the entire program. Because that's the goal, so to speak, is to practice these principles in all our affairs. So if that's the case, what we're doing is we're turning our will, nevertheless, my will but yours, right? And all the things that we care about, letting all of that go is the real purpose and the real gift of the program is doing what we decided to do in the third step. Another way, Kate, I've heard that put, you talking about the oneness of all things, is if we can look at this present moment like we're looking at an old film, and each moment would be one slide of that film, one little picture within the whole film strip. So when you snap the picture, everything is there. Okay. Nothing's left out of that picture. And so every moment has everything. So that's another way, if that helps someone to wrap their head around the oneness of all things, that could be another way of viewing that. Guys, we've had a good conversation today. Thank you. I think there's a lot of good stuff about the third step. And then we'll get into the fourth step next week. And not only, of course, are we going to talk about the Tao related to the step, we'll talk about how we work the fourth step too, and how we work that with sponsees as well. So it's going to be all of that, just like the first three were. And granted, some of these steps, we have to stretch it a little bit. These first three were pretty easy, especially 1 and 3, and 2 as well. So we do have some verses. We have one verse in particular that I would call the resentment verse, just like 552 in the big book. We'll talk about it next week too, I'm sure, in regards to the fourth step. Anything else, guys?
I
Well, if
think this
not,
was good.
I think so too. Thank you, Kate. If not, you guys have a great week and hope to see you next week. Thank you. Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.